The fog clung to the surface of K7X like a living thing. Thick gray swirls drifted over jagged obsidian rocks and frozen vents that hissed steam into the endless night. This moon had no name worth remembering, just a designation stamped on coalition charts and ignored by most. It orbited a dead star long past its burning years, now only a cold ember in the velvet dark. Few came here. Fewer stayed. But today something descended through the cloud cover, a small shuttle blackened by re-entry, scars and scorched along its spine, like it had fought its way through fire just to land. It touched down without sound. The landing struts unfolded with soft clicks and the ship settled into the permafrost with a sigh. For a long moment nothing moved. Then the hatch hissed open and a figure stepped out. She was tall but not imposing. Her frame was slender, almost fragile, wrapped in a white medical tunic that shimmered faintly under the dim emergency lights. Her skin carried the pale silver sheen of the Zenthari high caste, and her eyes were black pools that reflected nothing. Not fear, not excitement, not even curiosity. Just calculation. Her ears tapered to sharp points that twitched slightly, as if listening to frequencies no human ear could catch. This was Vela, xenobiologist, trauma specialist, and lead physician for Sector 9 of the Interstellar Coalition. Behind her, a low rumble shook the ground. The shuttle's secondary bay opened and something massive unfolded itself from the shadows. Scales like polished volcanic glass caught the weak light and reflected it in fractured shards. Wings stretched wide enough to blot out stars snapped once, then folded against a serpentine body, thick with muscle. Its eyes glowed faint amber and smoke curled from its nostrils with every breath. This was Cora, the last void-scale dragon and Vela's companion since she was a child, bonded not by command but by something deeper, something the Coalition could not replicate or explain. They had traveled 3 star systems to reach this place. Their mission was simple: observe, verify, and if necessary, terminate. Word had reached high command of an anomaly here on this forgotten rock, a human prisoner. Not just any human. One who had survived procedures that would have shattered even the hardiest Zenthari warrior. 6 full cycles of pain induction, neural overload, and sensory deprivation. And through it all, not a single scream, not even a whimper. The reports were marked unreliable, flagged as error or exaggeration. Humans were known for their emotional volatility, their biological fragility, their tendency to break under mild stress. They wept at loss, they panicked in darkness, they collapsed under duress. This case defied logic, and Vela, the most decorated young physician in the Coalition, did not believe in anomalies, only mistakes. She strode toward the outpost without looking back. Cor followed a few paces behind his massive claws, silent on the frozen ground. The facility rose from the ice like a steel tomb, angular, brutal, and sealed tight against the elements. The entrance dilated at her approach, biometric locks recognizing her rank. Inside, the air was sterile cold and smelled of ozone and antiseptic. Soldiers in Coalition armor stood at attention, their helmets hiding their faces. None spoke. None moved. They knew who she was. A junior officer, a Zenthari male with dull gray skin and nervous eyes, approached. He bowed his head slightly. Vela did not return the gesture. "The human is in containment cell 9. He said, his voice barely above a whisper. "He has not spoken since arrival. Has not eaten. Has not slept. We tried sedation. It had no effect. Show me," Vela said. They walked through sterile corridors lined with observation ports and humming machinery. The facility was designed for interrogation, not imprisonment. Every wall concealed injectors, neural probes, and sound emitters. Every floor panel could become a restraint grid. This was where the Coalition broke minds before extracting truths. They stopped before a thick, reinforced door marked with a red symbol, a human skull overlaid with a warning glyph. The officer tapped a code and the door slid open with a sigh. Inside, the room was bare. White walls, white floor, white ceiling. In the center stood a man. He was barefoot. His trousers were torn at the knees. His chest was bare and marked with old bruises, new scalds, and thin lines where restraints had bitten into his skin. His hair was dark and matted with dried sweat. But his eyes were clear, sharp, and fixed directly on Vela. He did not move, did not flinch, did not look away. "His name is Cade Winters," the officer whispered. "Former soldier. Designation unknown. Captured during the skirmish at Thorn's Hollow. He was the only one left alive when our scouts arrived." Vela stepped closer. She activated her wrist scanner. Biometrics flowed across the screen. Heart rate steady. Brain activity normal. No signs of psychosis or delirium. And yet the pain markers were off the scale. His nervous system had been pushed far beyond tolerance thresholds. By all medical standards, he should have been catatonic or dead. "Why are you here?" she asked. He said nothing. She circled him slowly, studied the way his muscles tensed without trembling, noted how his breathing remained even though his ribs had been cracked in 2 places. She saw the dried blood under his fingernails, the calluses on his knuckles, the way his stance remained rooted like a tree in a storm. "You feel nothing?" She said not a question but a challenge. Still silence. She turned to the officer. "Run phase 1 again. Full spectrum. I want to see it myself." The officer hesitated. "Ma'am, the last time we—" "Do it." The walls shifted. Panels slid open, revealing arrays of emitters. A low hum filled the room, then rose to a piercing whine. Lights flickered into strobing patterns. The air thickened with chemical irritants. Neural inducers fired, sending waves of artificial agony through the prisoner's body. Cade Winters did not move. His jaw tightened, his fingers curled slightly, but no sound escaped his lips. No cry, no gasp, no plea, only breath. Slow, measured breath. Vela watched her scanner. His pain tolerance was not just high. It was impossible. His endorphin levels should have crashed hours ago, yet his body produced more, again and again, like an engine that refused to stall. After 10 minutes, she raised her hand. "Stop." The room fell silent. The lights returned to normal. The air cleared. Cade stood as before, eyes on her, unbroken. Core, who had been waiting outside the cell, now pressed his massive head against the observation glass. His amber eyes locked onto the human. He made no sound, but his tail coiled tightly, then slowly uncurled. Vela felt something shift inside her. Not fear, not admiration. Something worse. Doubt. She had spent her life studying species, cataloging their limits, writing papers on their weaknesses. Humans were always at the bottom of her charts. Emotional, irrational, fragile. She had once presented a lecture titled, "The Biological Inefficiency of Human Pain Response." She had shown graphs comparing human collapse thresholds to Xanthari endurance. The audience had nodded in agreement. But this man, this silent man in a white room, he did not fit her data. "Why?" she asked again, softer this time. "Why do you not scream?" Cade finally moved. Not much, just a slight tilt of his head. His voice when it came was rough but calm, like stone dragged over ice. "You don't understand." Those 3 words hung in the air heavier than any scream. Vela stared at him, her mind racing, searching for error, for trick, for hidden tech. But there was none. Just a man, just pain, and silence. She turned and walked out. Core followed her without looking back. In her quarters later, she reviewed everything. The battle logs from Thorn's Hollow, the medical reports, the security footage. She watched as Cade was dragged from a ruined trench, his uniform burned off his body, half covered in ash. She saw him walk into the interrogation room without being led. She saw him stand through procedures that would make a Xanthari elder beg for death. And then she saw something else. In the background of one feed, a small screen showed old Earth footage. Black and white, grainy but clear enough. Soldiers in mud-filled trenches bandaging each other with torn cloth. Children in bombed-out cities sharing a single piece of bread. Medics working by candlelight with no gloves, no tools, just hands and will. She had seen these before, dismissed them as primitive, as proof of human desperation, not strength. Now she was not so sure. Core lay curled near the window, his eyes half closed but alert. He had not made a sound all evening, but every time Vela looked at the footage of Cade, his ear flicked toward the screen. Something was happening here, something the Coalition could not measure with scanners or break with pain. Vela sat back in her chair, her perfect theories, her clean charts, her elegant conclusions. All of it felt brittle now, like glass about to crack. She looked at the human's file one last time, his name, his rank, his silence, and for the first time in her life, Vela, the proud alien doctor, felt small. The fog outside thickened. The dead star offered no light. But somewhere in that white cell, a human stood unbowed, and the void watched. Morning did not come to K7X. There was only a slow thinning of the fog, a pale shimmer in the sky where the dead star hung like a ghost. Inside the Coalition outpost, the lights stayed the same, cold white, unchanging. Time was measured in cycles, not hours, and Vela had already begun the next phase. She stood before the command console, her fingers dancing over holographic keys. Her eyes were tired but sharp. She had not slept. Instead, she had reviewed every file on human physiology, every recorded case of torture survival, every anomaly flagged in Coalition archives. Most were dismissed as error, contamination, or deception, but a few stubborn entries remained unexplained. She ignored them before. Now she could not. Cade Winters was not an exception. He was a pattern. She activated Protocol Epsilon, the highest tier of sensory and neural stress testing, authorized only for non-sentient threats or confirmed traitors. She listed him as both. The system accepted her override without question. Her rank still held weight even if her certainty did not. Kor watched from the corner of the observation room. He had not left her side since they arrived. His massive body lay coiled but alert, his amber eyes fixed on the feed from Containment Cell 9. He made no sound, but his tail flicked once, slow and deliberate, when the first emitters powered on. Down in the cell, Cade stood as before, barefoot, bruised, silent. They had not fed him, had not offered water, had not given him a cot or blanket, only the white void and the weight of his own body. The test began with sound. Low frequencies pulsed through the floor, vibrating bone and organ. Then came high-pitched shrieks that clawed at the inside of the skull. Layered over it were distorted voices whispering in dead languages, crying in pain, calling names that meant nothing. The goal was not to hurt but to unravel, to make the mind beg for silence. Cade closed his eyes. His chest rose and fell in steady rhythm. His hands stayed at his sides. Vela frowned. She tapped a command, activate dermal inducers. The walls rippled. Thousands of microneedles extended and retracted, sending waves of simulated pain across his skin. Burning, freezing, tearing. His body registered every sensation. His nervous system lit up like a storm on her screen. But his face showed nothing. No grimace, no twitch, only the faintest tightening around his eyes. She increased intensity. Level 3. Level 4, still nothing. She leaned closer to the screen. Her breath fogged the glass. Why? Kor shifted behind her. A low hum vibrated through the floor. Not a growl. Not a warning. Just a sound like distant thunder. She ignored it. She needed data. Proof. Something to anchor her crumbling belief. Next came the neural echo chamber, a Xanthari invention designed to replay a subject's worst memories in vivid detail. It required a neural scan first. They had taken one during his intake. Rough. Incomplete. But enough. The chamber activated. Cade jerked slightly. Just once, his eyes flew open. For the first time, something flickered in them. Not fear, not pain. Recognition. On the feed, Vela saw flashes, not clear images. Just fragments, fire, smoke. A child's hand reaching. A voice saying, "Hold on, just hold on." Then silence. Then running. Then falling. Then rising again. He staggered but did not fall. His hands clenched into fists. Blood seeped from his palms where old wounds reopened. But he stayed upright. His breath came faster now, but still controlled. Still his. Vela watched, stunned. The echo chamber did not create false memories. It pulled real ones, amplified them, made them live again. Most subjects broke in minutes. Some died from shock. Cade stood through it for 23 minutes. When the chamber powered down, he swayed once, then straightened. His eyes found the observation lens. Found her. "You don't understand," he said again. This time his voice cracked. Not from pain. From something deeper. Disappointment, maybe. Or pity. Vela stepped back as if struck. She turned off the feed. Paced the room. Her mind racing. She had run every test she could think of. Pushed every boundary. And still he stood. Not because he was numb, but because he chose to. Why, she whispered to no one. Kor rose slowly. He padded to her side and lowered his head until it was level with hers. His breath was warm. His eyes held hers. In that gaze there was no judgment. Only waiting. She looked at the dragon, then back at the empty screen. Something in her shifted. Not all at once, but like ice beginning to melt. She needed to speak to him. Not as a subject. Not as a prisoner, but as something else. She walked to the armory. Took a standard-issue medkit. No weapons. No restraints. Just bandages, antiseptic, and a nutrient paste. She hesitated, then added a small thermal blanket. Kor followed her to the cell entrance. The guards looked surprised but stepped aside. She entered alone. The door sealed behind her. The white room felt smaller now. Colder. Cade stood in the center, his back to her. He did not turn. She stopped a few feet away, placed the medkit on the floor. "I brought supplies," she said. He did not answer. She knelt. Opened the kit. Took out the antiseptic. I can treat your wounds. Still silence. She looked at his back, saw the crisscross of old scars, new burns, and half-healed lacerations. Some looked weeks old, others hours. None had been cleaned. None had festered. His body healed fast, unnaturally fast. You are not like other humans, she said. Or perhaps you are. And we never saw it. He turned then, slowly. His eyes met hers. Not with anger. Not with hope. Just weariness. You think pain is weakness, she said. It is not. It is data. Survival. You do not scream because screaming does not help. It wastes air. It draws attention. It shows fear. And fear gets you killed. He nodded once. Where did you learn that? She asked. Earth, he said. Just that, one word, but it carried weight. Centuries of war, disease, famine, survival. A planet that had burned and rebuilt itself over and over. A species that had crawled out of mud and starlight and refused to die. Vela felt something crack inside her. Not her logic. Her pride. She reached for his arm. He did not pull away. She cleaned a burn on his forearm. He did not flinch. She wrapped a bandage around his hand. His fingers trembled slightly, but he said nothing. Why do you help me? He asked. Because I was wrong, she said. He studied her face, then gave a small nod. That was all. They sat in silence for a while. Not awkward. Just quiet, like two soldiers after a long battle. Later, she returned to her quarters, uploaded new logs, flagged the old reports not as errors but as evidence. She typed a message to High Command. Recommended reclassification of human pain response from fragile to adaptive, from inefficient to resilient. She hesitated, then deleted it. They would not believe her. Not yet. Instead, she opened an old archive. Earth history. Not the coalition summaries. The raw footage. Uncensored. Unfiltered. She watched humans dig through rubble to save strangers, share their last sip of water with enemies, carry wounded comrades for miles through snow and fire. She saw mothers shield children with their bodies, saw old men stand before tanks with nothing but songs. She had called it desperation. Now she saw it for what it was. Courage. Kor lay by the window, his eyes half closed. But when she played a clip of a human medic stitching a wound with fishing line, he lifted his head, watched, then made that low hum again. Vela looked at him. You knew, didn't you? He blinked once slowly. She smiled faintly, the first real smile in days. Outside, the fog thickened again. The dead star offered no warmth. But inside the outpost, something had changed. In Cell 9, Cade sat on the floor, his back against the wall, the thermal blanket around his shoulders, his eyes closed, not sleeping, just resting. And for the first time since his capture, he allowed himself to breathe. Vela watched the feed from her room. No scanners, no tests, just observation. She would run more trials tomorrow, but not to break him, to understand him. Because the proud alien doctor was beginning to see the truth. Humans did not endure pain because they were strong. They endured it because they had to. And that made all the difference. Days blurred together inside the outpost. No sun, no moon, no rhythm. Only the hum of machines and the quiet steps of guards on patrol. Vela stopped filing routine reports. She stopped attending briefings. Instead, she watched, listened, learned. She brought Cade fresh water each cycle, clean bandages, once a bar of nutrient-rich paste shaped like bread. He never thanked her, but he always took it, and each time their eyes met a little longer. Kor had not left the observation deck in 3 cycles. The dragon slept in fits, curling around the console like a sentinel. His gaze never strayed far from the live feed of Containment Cell 9. When Cade moved, Kor's ear twitched. When Cade coughed, the dragon rose slightly, then settled again. It was not fascination. It was recognition. Vela noticed it first during a quiet moment. She had replayed footage from Thorn's Hollow, the battle that left Cade as the last survivor. Grainy thermal imaging showed him dragging 3 wounded comrades through a collapsed trench, while plasma fire rained from above. He shielded them with his own body, held them close as the heat scorched his back. When the coalition drones arrived hours later, the others were dead, but Cade was still breathing, still holding them. As the footage played, Kor made a sound, low, deep, resonant, not a growl, not a warning. A hum of kinship, Vela froze. She had never heard him make that sound for anyone but her. That night she sat alone in the dim light of her quarters, scrolling through old human war logs, not the sanitized versions, the raw field diaries, letters, voice recordings. One stood out. A soldier named Lena Woods writing to her sister before a final push on Mars Colony 7. She wrote that fear was not the enemy. Surrender was. That pain was just a companion you learned to walk with. Vela read it twice, then saved it to her private drive. The next morning, an alert flashed across her console. Priority message from High Command. Her stomach tightened. She opened it. Subject Cade Winters, reclassified level Omega. Termination authorized within 48 cycles. Reason: anomalous resilience poses strategic risk. Non-compliant species behavior. Potential for replication. Her fingers went cold. She reread the message 3 times, hoping the words would change. They did not. She looked at the feed. Cade was sitting cross-legged on the floor, eyes closed, head tilted, as if listening to something far away. Peaceful, unaware. She wanted to scream, to argue, to demand explanation. But she knew better. The Coalition did not tolerate doubt, especially not from physicians who grew too close to their subjects. She turned off the screen, sat in silence. Her mind raced. Options formed, then shattered. Appeal denied. Delay impossible. Escape unthinkable. Cor lifted his head, his amber eyes fixed on her. He knew. Somehow he always knew. She stood, walked to the armory. Not for weapons. For something else. A data spike, a Zenthari tool used to override security systems in emergencies. She had clearance to carry one. Never used it. Then she went to medical storage. Took concentrated coagulant spray neural stabilizers and a compact field suture kit. Last she grabbed 2 thermal wraps and a portable hydration pack. Cor followed her without sound. She did not go to Cade's cell. Not yet. First, she accessed the outpost's mainframe through a maintenance terminal deep in sub-level 3. Entered a series of codes. Rerouted camera feeds. Created a 30-second blind spot in Corridor 7. The path from the cell block to the storm tunnels. It would not hold long, but it might be enough. As she worked, her hands shook. Not from fear, from fury. At herself for not seeing this coming. At the Coalition for seeing strength as threat. At the universe for being so cruel. She returned to observation, activated the feed. Cade was standing now, facing the door, as if he knew. She took a breath, pressed the comm. "They are coming for you," she said. "In 2 cycles. Termination order." He did not react, just nodded once. "I can delay them," she said. "Not stop delay." He turned to the camera, his eyes sharp, tired but clear. "Don't risk yourself." "It is not risk," she said. "It is choice." He studied her face, then looked past her, at Cor, who stood just behind her shoulder, visible in the reflection of the screen. "The dragon's choice," she whispered. Cade's lips curved slightly, not a smile, but something close. She ended the feed, gathered her supplies, and walked to Cell 9. The guards were gone. She had sent them on a false alert, biohazard in Sector 4. They would be busy for minutes, not long. But enough. She entered the cell. Cade stood waiting. No words, just action. She handed him the suture kit. He strapped it to his belt, took the hydration pack, slung the thermal wraps over his shoulder. His movements were slow but precise. "Practiced. You know the tunnels," she said. "They lead to the glacial caves, 2 kilometers east, unstable, but hidden." He nodded. Cor stepped into the cell then. The space shrank around his massive frame. The air grew warm, smoky. Cade did not flinch. Instead, he reached out slowly and placed his hand on the dragon's snout. Cor rumbled, a deep vibration that filled the room. Vela watched, stunned. No one touched a void-scale dragon unless bonded. It was law. Instinct. Survival. Yet Cade touched him like an old friend, and Cor leaned into it. The dragon lowered himself onto his front legs, dipped his head. An invitation. Cade climbed onto his back, not with effort, with ease, like he had done it before in another life. "Vela, what will you do?" he asked. "I stay," she said. "Someone must watch the door." He shook his head. "Come with us." "I cannot. My clearance will draw attention. But without me, they will hunt you harder." He looked at her, really looked, then nodded. "You are not what I thought, and you," she said, "are more than they feared." Alarms blared in the distance. Red lights flashed. They found the blind spot. "Go," she said. Kor rose, turned, and with one powerful leap crashed through the reinforced rear wall of the cell. Ice and metal shattered. Cold wind rushed in. The dragon did not look back. He ran, low and fast, toward the storm tunnels, his wings tucked tight against his body. Vela stood in the ruined doorway watching until they disappeared into the fog. Then she turned, walked calmly to the command center, triggered a fire suppression protocol in Sector 9. Thick foam flooded the corridors, bought more time. By the time enforcers reached the cell, all they found was rubble smoke and a single med badge stamped with Vela's insignia. High Command summoned her within the hour. She stood before Admiral Zeresh, his face a mask of cold fury. "You allowed the Omega subject to escape?" Zeresh said, his voice sharp as glass. "I attempted containment," she said. "The dragon breached security. I could not stop it. Do not insult my intelligence, Vela. You tampered with the feeds, disabled the locks. You aided a threat." She met his gaze. "If endurance is a threat, then we are all in danger." Silence fell, heavy and final. "You are stripped of rank," he said. "Your security clearance revoked. You will remain under house arrest until transport arrives for tribunal." She bowed her head. "As you command." But as she turned to leave, he added one last thing. "That human will die in the ice, and his silence will mean nothing." Vela paused, then said quietly, "Pain does not need an audience to be real." She walked out, head high. Back in her quarters, she found Kor's empty bed, the console screen dark, but on the floor near the door lay a single obsidian scale, still warm. She picked it up, held it in her palm. It pulsed faintly like a heartbeat. She packed nothing. Instead, she accessed a hidden file, the Earth Archive. The letter from Lena Woods. She copied it to a microdrive, slipped it into her sleeve. That night, while guards changed shift, she slipped out through a maintenance duct. No alarms, no pursuit. They thought her broken, obedient, contained. But Vela was no longer a physician of data. She was a student of silence. She followed the trail not by footprints but by heat, by instinct, by the echo of a dragon's hum in the wind. The storm raged outside. Ice shards cut the air, but she walked into it without hesitation. Somewhere in the glacial caves, a human and a dragon waited, and this time she would not observe. She would stand with them. The glacial cave stretched deep beneath K7X's frozen crust like veins in a slumbering giant. Walls of blue ice reflected the faint bioluminescent fungus that clung to cracks and ledges. The air was still here, cold but not biting, sheltered from the storm that howled above. In the largest chamber at the heart of the network, Cade sat beside a small fire not made of wood, but of crushed thermal bricks and dragon ember. Kor's breath carefully controlled to warm, not burn. His wounds were cleaner now, bandaged with strips torn from thermal wraps. His ribs still ached, but he could breathe without sharp pain. He sipped from the hydration pack slowly, letting the warmth spread through his core. Across from him, Kor lay coiled like a mountain of living stone, eyes half closed but alert, ears twitching at every distant rumble from the surface. They had been here 3 cycles, long enough to rest. Not long enough to heal fully. But Cade had never needed full healing to fight. He heard her before he saw her. Soft footsteps on ice. Careful, measured. Not a soldier's stride. Not a hunter's. A healer's. He did not reach for a weapon. There was none to reach for. Instead, he turned his head toward the tunnel entrance. Vela stepped into the firelight. Her white tunic was stained with mud and frost, her silver skin dulled by exhaustion, but her eyes were clear, determined. She held nothing in her hands. No scanner, no weapon, no demands. Cade nodded once. "You came." "I did," she said. Kor lifted his head. A soft hum vibrated through the chamber. Not warning, welcome. Vela stepped closer, knelt by the fire. She did not ask if he was all right. She saw the answer in the way he held his left arm slightly stiff, the way his breath hitched when he shifted. Instead, she opened her med pack and began preparing fresh dressings. "You should not be here," she said. "They will hunt you." "Hunt us, I know," he said, "but hiding forever is another kind of death." She looked at him, really looked. Saw the lines around his eyes, the scar running from temple to jaw, the quiet strength that did not need volume to be felt. "Why do you fight?" he asked. "You had everything." "Rank safety purpose, I thought I did," she said. "But purpose is not given. It is chosen." He studied her, then nodded. "That is very human of you. She almost smiled. Almost. For hours they sat in silence. Not empty silence. The kind that carries understanding. Cade fed the fire with more thermal bricks. Vela treated a burn on Kor's flank where shrapnel had grazed him during their escape. The dragon tolerated her touch with surprising patience. Later, as the fire dimmed, Cade spoke. "I was not always like this," he said. "Before Thorn's Hollow, I believed in rules and orders and clean endings. Then the dreadnought came. No warning, just fire. Our fleet was scrap in minutes. But the colony below, 5,000 souls, had no way out." He paused, stared into the flames. "We held the ridge with broken rifles and jury-rigged railguns. 17 hours. Men and women, boys and girls. They carried ammo on broken legs, shared water with enemies, sang old songs to keep fear quiet. When my squad fell, I took their rifles. When my hands blistered, I wrapped them in cloth and kept firing." His voice did not shake, but something in his eyes did. They did not die for victory. They died so others could live one more minute, one more breath. That is all pain is for, to buy time for someone else. Vela sat very still, her chest tight. On Xanthari world, she had treated wounds, healed fevers, saved lives. But never like this. Never with sacrifice as the currency. "Pain is a language," she said slowly. He looked at her. "Yes. And humans speak it fluently because we've had to." Outside, a deeper rumble echoed through the ice, not thunder. Engines. They both stood. Kor rose in one fluid motion, his wings unfolding slightly, smoke curling from his nostrils. "They found us," Vela said. "Not yet," she added, "but soon. The coalition does not leave loose ends." Cade moved to the cave entrance, peering through a crack in the ice. In the distance above, the fog glowed with the lights of dropships, dozens of them, forming a grid pattern. "Scanning, they are going to glass the moon," she said. "Burn the surface. Melt the ice. Leave nothing alive." Cade did not flinch. "How long?" 2 cycles, maybe 3. "Then we do not have much time." "What will you do?" she asked. He turned to her, eyes steady. "I will not hide. Not again. But you cannot fight them alone." "I am not alone." He looked at Kor. The dragon lowered his head again, offering his back. Cade climbed on with ease despite his injuries. Vela hesitated, then stepped forward. "I am coming with you." "No," he said. "This is my fight. It is mine too," she said. "I helped you escape. I chose this. And if they burn this moon, they burn everything we have learned." He studied her, saw no fear, only resolve. "You do not have to do this, I know," she said. "That is why I am." Kor rumbled softly, approving. They moved through the tunnels quickly, Kor leading the way, his heat-melting, narrow paths through ice walls. Vela followed close behind Cade, gripping the dragon's spines with one hand, the other clutching her med pack. They emerged near the eastern ridge just as the first plasma rounds struck the surface. The ground shook. Fire bloomed in the distance, turning fog to steam. The sky glowed red. Below, in a shallow ravine, a group of outpost workers, mostly human laborers brought in for mining, huddled in fear. Coalition policy was clear. Non-combatants were not evacuated during sterilization. They were collateral. Cade saw them. His jaw tightened. "We have to get them out," he said. "How?" Vela asked. "There is no ship, no shelter." Kor turned his massive head toward the ravine, then looked at Cade. Understanding passed between them. The dragon spread his wings, took 3 heavy steps forward, and launched into the sky. Fire erupted from his maw, not wild, not destructive, but precise. He melted a path through the ice wall, shielding the ravine from direct plasma strikes. Then he landed beside the group, roaring, not in anger but command. The humans froze, then slowly approached. They had heard stories of void-scale dragons, monsters of war. But this one lowered his head, offered his back. Cade jumped down, helped the elderly, the injured, the children onto Kor's broad spine. Vela tore open her med pack, handing out coagulant spray and thermal wraps. "Hurry," she said. "We do not have long." When the last person was aboard, Kor rose again, this time slower, burdened but steady. He flew low, hugging the terrain toward the deeper caves. Cade stayed behind. Vela did too. "Why?" she asked. "They are safe for now." "Because the coalition will send ground teams," she said, "to confirm the kill, and they will find the tunnels." He nodded, then turned to her. "You know what to do." She did. She activated her wrist comm, the last one not wiped by security. patched it into the outpost's abandoned emergency frequency. Her fingers flew over the keys. "What are you sending?" he asked. "The truth," she said. She uploaded everything, the footage of Cade enduring pain, the logs of human resilience, the letter from Lena Woods, the recordings of medics singing in ruins. She tagged it with a single header. "Pain is not weakness. It is proof." She broadcast it on every open channel. Coalition, civilian, military, even pirate nets. "They will silence it in minutes," he said. Maybe, she said, but for 1 minute someone will hear it. Above, the sky burned brighter. More ships arrived. The bombardment intensified. Cade picked up a fallen plasma rifle from a destroyed sentry post, checked its charge, grimaced at the pain in his ribs. Bela took a deep breath, then reached into her sleeve, pulled out a small device, a Xanthari neural disruptor. Non-lethal, used to stun. She had taken it from medical storage weeks ago just in case. "Not so clean now, am I?" she said. He looked at her, then gave the smallest nod. "Welcome to the war, Doctor." They moved toward the ridge where the first ground team would land. Snow fell around them, mixing with ash. Fire lit the horizon. Core circled above a dark shape against the burning sky. Bela thought of her old lectures, her charts, her certainty, all of it ash now. But in its place something stronger. Grew, not data, not theory, belief, and as the first dropship descended, engines roaring, she stood beside a human and faced the fire, not as physician, not as alien, but as one who finally understood. Pain was not the end, it was the beginning of something worth fighting for. The dropship landed hard, its thrusters melting the ice into black slush. Armored enforcers poured out, their visors glowing red in the dark. They moved in formation, precise, silent, lethal. Their orders were simple. Eliminate all life signs. Confirm sterilization. Report success. Cade crouched behind a ridge of shattered rock, his plasma rifle humming softly in his grip. His ribs screamed with every breath, but his aim was steady. Vela knelt beside him, her neural disruptor charged and ready. Her hands did not shake. Not anymore. Above them, Core circled low, his wings cutting through smoke and ash. The dragon's roar had changed. No longer a sound of warning. Now it was a battle cry. The first enforcer stepped into the kill zone. Cade fired. Plasma tore through armor, melted bone, turned helmet to slag. The enforcer dropped without a sound. The others scattered, returned fire. Bolts of energy scorched the ridge, sending shards of ice flying. Vela activated her disruptor. A pulse of blue light rippled outward. 2 enforcers staggered, then collapsed, their neural systems overloaded. Cade moved fast, not like a soldier, like a ghost. He used the terrain, the fog, the chaos. Every shot counted, every step precise. He did not waste breath, did not curse, did not flinch. Vela followed, not to fight, to heal. When an enforcer fell, she checked for life. If found, she stunned, not killed. She was not a warrior, but she would not let cruelty go unchallenged. The battle spread. More dropships descended. More enforcers landed. But the caves below echoed with movement. The human laborers, now armed with scraps and fire, rose from hidden tunnels. They fought not with skill but with desperation, with fury, with the last breaths of people who had nothing left to lose. Core dove. Fire erupted from his maw, engulfing a squad before they could raise their weapons. He landed hard, claws tearing through armor. His tail swept 2 enforcers into a frozen ravine. He fought not with rage but with purpose. Every movement protected someone below. On a distant ridge, a young woman with singed hair dragged an injured man behind cover. Another used a melted pipe as a club. A boy no older than 12 hurled chunks of ice like stones. They were not soldiers, but they were human. And that was enough. Vela saw it then. Not just survival. Unity. The kind that could not be taught, only forged in fire. The Coalition had always seen humans as chaotic, emotional, weak. But they mistook compassion for fragility. They mistook sacrifice for stupidity. They never understood that the same heart that wept for a fallen friend could also walk through plasma fire to carry them home. Cade took a hit. A plasma bolt struck his shoulder, spinning him sideways. He hit the ground hard but rolled fast, came up firing, dropped 2 more enforcers before pressing a hand to his wound. Bela reached him in seconds. She sprayed coagulant over the burn, then wrapped it tight. He nodded once. "No thanks, no pain. Just acknowledgement. They have more coming," he said. "I know," she said. "Then we hold. For what?" "For them." He looked toward the caves, the people, the dragon still fighting in the sky. She followed his gaze, then looked at her comm. The broadcast had been active for 12 minutes, impossibly long for an unsanctioned signal, but someone had kept it alive, bounced it through old relay stations, pirate channels, even Zenthari civilian nets, and now, answers. On the edge of the atmosphere something flickered. Not coalition silver, not sterile white, but rusted hulls, patched armor, flickering lights, human ships, old ones, forgotten ones, Freedom-class destroyers with jury-rigged cannons, colony freighters bristling with scrap-mounted railguns, med vessels flying no flag, but painted with red crosses and earth symbols. They emerged from warp scars like ghosts from a forgotten war. The coalition command ship hesitated. Scanners overloaded. Comms flooded. Vela smiled faintly. They came. Cade did not look up, but his grip on the rifle tightened. Not in fear. In pride. The human fleet did not attack. Not at first. They formed a ring around the moon. Shields flared. Weapons charged. A silent message. Leave. Or burn with us. The coalition wavered, then retreated. Dropships lifted off. Enforcers fell back. The bombardment ceased. The sky dimmed. Silence fell over K7X, not peaceful, but heavy, like the world holding its breath. Kor landed beside them, smoke curling from his jaws. His scales were scarred but whole. His eyes found Vela, then Cade. He lowered his head. Cade climbed onto his back with effort but without complaint. Vela followed. Her legs trembling not from exhaustion but from awe. They flew over the battlefield, over the caves, over the people who now emerged, blinking into the dim light. Some wept, some cheered. Most just stood watching the sky where human ships held the line. In the command ship above, Admiral Zoresh stared at the screen. His face unreadable, his aide whispered orders to retreat, to regroup, to erase the broadcast, but it was too late. The message had spread, to frontier worlds, to neutral systems, to Zenthari students studying xenobiology. They had heard the voice of Lena Woods, seen the footage of medics in ruins, watched a man stand through hell and say nothing. Something had shifted, not in data, in belief. On the surface, Vela dismounted first. She walked to the edge of the ridge where the ice met sky. Cade followed slower, now leaning slightly on the dragon's flank. "You did it," she said. "No," he said. "We did," Kor rumbled softly. Smoke curled into the cold air. Below, the survivors gathered. Not just humans. A few Zenthari laborers who had refused orders. A pair of engineers who disabled their own scanners. They stood together not as species but as people who chose something greater than fear. Vela activated her comm one last time. Not to broadcast. To record. "This is Physician Vela of the Zenthari High Caste. I once believed humans fragile. I was wrong. They do not endure pain because they are strong. They endure it because they refuse to let each other fall. And that is something even the stars cannot measure." She closed the channel. Cade looked at her, then knelt in the snow. Not in submission. In offering. He held out his hand. In it was a shard of obsidian. "Kor's scale warmed by fire for you," he said. She took it. The heat spread through her palm like a promise. In the days that followed, the human fleet stayed. Not to conquer. To rebuild. Medics came down with real supplies, real beds, real food. Engineers helped seal the caves. Children played near Kor, who lay like a living mountain watching over them all. Vela worked beside them, not as a physician of the coalition, but as a healer of the quiet kind. She treated burn-set, bone-stitched wounds, and sometimes she just sat with the grieving. Silent. Present. Cade recovered slowly, walked the perimeter each day, spoke little. But when he did, people listened. One evening, as the fog thinned and the dead star cast its pale light, Vela found him on the ridge again. "You will leave soon," she said. "The fleet needs me, but I will return." She nodded. "I will be here." He looked at her. "You could come with us." She smiled. "My place is here. Learning, teaching, remembering." He understood. Kor padded up behind them, nudged Cade gently with his snout, then turned to Vela and lowered his head. She reached up, touched his brow, warm, solid, real. The proud alien doctor had come to study pain. She left having learned courage, and as the human ships faded into the stars, the moon of K7X breathed again.